Hi, it's Alistair at Electric Scotland. This is me doing my introduction to my weekly newsletter for November the 23rd, 2018. Without further ado, I'll start on the stories that I've got for you this week. This first one is from Canada. Governor General to invest 41 recipients into the Order of Canada. The nice thing about that is it not only tells you the people that are getting the award, but also tells you a little bit about them and on why they're getting it. So it's quite interesting. The next story is Liverpool and Scotland's Kenny Dalglish receives a knighthood. As a player, Sir Kenny helped Liverpool win 3 European Cups in 7 years. He went on to successfully manage both Liverpool and Blackburn Rovers. So he's certainly a famous Scottish footballer, and I think well loved by a lot of people. So I thought you might like to read that. The next story is Écosse Elite pushes out super yacht to fly the flag for Scots brands. This is Edinburgh-based Écosse Elite, set up by the backers of Jet Logic, will take a 40-metre luxury yacht to Formula One events, starting with next year's Monaco Grand Prix. Next story is Brexit plans seen as disaster for US-UK trade. It says the deal unveiled this week for Britain to exit the European Union would block US plans to negotiate a free trade agreement with the UK. Pretty serious stuff that, you know. Next story is possible learning benefits of Scots language being probed. Banff Academy has teamed up with the University of Aberdeen in a bid to assess the potential educational benefits of dialects such as Doric. And again, a really interesting wee story there. And then we have the Withdrawal Agreement. The Northern Ireland Protocol is neither a backstop nor temporary. I think I mentioned to you that this agreement Theresa May's put through is pretty horrible, and by all accounts it does look like it will be voted out in the Parliament. But I did say to you that I wouldn't analyse the 585 report because I'm sure lawyers in Britain would do that for us. And in fact they have. This is the story. It says here, in the first of a series of assessments of the key issues in Theresa May's 585-page draft withdrawal agreement, Lawyers for Britain Chairman Martin Howe, QC, explains the so-called backstop or Northern Ireland Protocol, which occupies 175 pages of the text. So if you read that, you won't need to read all these pages of the text. But, you know, it's pretty disturbing when you read that. Okay, unseen Edinburgh archive from the 50s and 60s. A doctor who wandered the streets of Edinburgh capturing images of everyday life in the 1950s and 60s is to have his images shown in a major exhibition. And there's some nice pictures, wee selection that they've got in that article, so well worth looking at. Then the final story is South Korea strives to beat Japan and China to UK trade deal. It says companies from both countries are expected to benefit from any such deal, including Samsung Electronics and Hyundai Motor from the South Korean side, and Dyson and Diageo from the UK. I mean, I think it's worth the read because that gives you a kind of an example of how trade with the world can benefit Britain. And that's just an example of South Korea. Okay, so on to Electric Canadian. Canada and its provinces. I've got the final volume up, 23, It's the general index, manuscript sources, bibliography, etc. And that, as I say, completes this 23-volume publication. So 23 weeks, and we've now finished it. I'm getting towards the end of the Engineering Journal. I've got up another volume for 1963. I think there's maybe a couple more to go, and that's it. And then I got the Mining Review up. We've added a volume for 1921. There's a good number of volumes left for that one, so that'll continue. And then a new one I've got is the Canadian Horticulturalist. I did volumes 2 and 3, and it's published by the Fruit Growers Association of Ontario. I've got quite a lot of volumes of that which I've acquired, and they're really interesting to read, especially if you're into farming and so forth. Okay, then we've got Douglas Brimner, archivist. I added him to our Makers of Canada, along with some reports he published on the Canadian Archives and his report on faults and failures of the late Presbyterian Union in Canada. Really interesting character. He's a Scot, obviously ended his days in Canada, but he did a fabulous job on the archives. And if you read these couple of reports I put up, you'll see the amount of work he did was just extraordinary. I mean, literally thousands of volumes he went through. Okay, then Reminiscences of Canada in the Early Days of Fergus, being 3 lectures delivered to the Farmers and Mechanics Institute in Fergus by A.D. Ferrier in 1864 and 1865. I've read those, fascinating, really is, especially because he takes you on his first trip to Fergus, which in itself was quite a trek in those days. And then the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, I just happened to stumble on this one. It's an illustrated publication, a bit like a comic, you might say, the way it's done. So I just thought you might like to kind of peruse that. Then on to Electric Scotland. I've got passages in the early military life of General Sir George T. Napier. It's written by himself and edited by his son, General W.C.E. Napier, in 1884. Then observations on a tour through the Highlands and part of the Western Isles of Scotland. It's particularly Staffa and Achomkill, to which are added a description of the Falls of Clyde, of the country around Moffat, and an analysis of its mineral waters, and it's in 2 volumes. So again, interesting. There's no spellings there. And then I've done a wee article using the letter F for an S. I've mentioned quite often, when I put a certain old book up, I said it might be a little challenging to read because where there should be an S is actually an F. And so I thought I would do a wee article to explain why that was the case and how long it existed in Scotland. So I thought you might be interested in that. Then the Falklands War, I've just been looking at that again, and I found a couple of good detailed videos which give an overview of the war. And obviously mistakes happen, but I mean, one of it is a US analysis. And he actually said that he doubted even today if the US could have done the same operation. Because we're not geared up to these kind of little wars many, many thousands of miles away from where we are. And he's actually explaining why he didn't think the States could actually have handled that type of war themselves. And he explains how basically the UK cobbled it all together. So it was quite fascinating listening to that, I must confess. And I've also got a little video up there, it's one of the ones I've included, is about the first bombing raid on the Falkland Islands, because that was like, I think it was like the first Apollo mission to land on the moon. It was pretty scary stuff. Then I've got another Hilton newsletter in. It's their autumn 2018 newsletter. Then Robert Michael Ballantyne. I've added a biography of this fur trader and author. He was born on the 24th of April 1825 in Edinburgh. Certainly he's quite a character, and his novels are excellent. So, again, I just love biographies. Then I found a wee guidebook on Tom Tull in Banffshire. So, I've put a link to that book. Because Tom Tull is actually the highest village in Scotland. And it's always the first to get blocked by snow, I might add. Then I have Tobias Smollett. It's a biography by Oliphant and Smeaton. So again, another interesting biography there. Then I found a copy of the Paisley Directory and General Advertiser for 1911 to 12, which I've put up there. I've added actually that to the Gazetteer page for Paisley. No, I haven't. I've added it to the page on the Paisley shawl, shall I say. Then, one for Australia, Australia Twice Traversed. The Romance of Exploration, being a narrative compiled from the journals of 5 exploring expeditions into and through Central, South Australia and Western Australia from 1872 to 1876 by Ernest Giles, and it's in 2 volumes. We have got some other material up on expeditions in Australia, but I felt this brought the whole lot together very well. So it's pretty fascinating stuff, because some of the country going through Australia is just desert, really. It's pretty horrendous and hot and everything, so it's quite a job exploring. Then I have Memoirs of Life and Writings of George Buckhannon by David Irving. This is produced in 1807. So again, another interesting book about someone. Then The Keeper's Book. It's a guide to the duties of a gamekeeper. This is actually the 7th edition, rewritten and enlarged by P. Geoffrey Mackay. This version was produced in 1910. And I will say that he does say in his preface that a lot of the gamekeepers weren't too happy with some of the things he was saying in the book. But he said that's the problem in Scotland, and that people are very fixed in the way they do things. And they're not very keen to change what their fathers did all these years ago. But he's saying we do need to change. And he's hoping that education will start to be a little bit more pro-rural rather than urban. Because he's also making a point that when kids go to school, they're normally taught from an urban point of view, and agriculture and crafts of the country and stuff are not really covered in education, and he thinks that's a major mistake. And then I've got quite a long story for you. This is Edinburgh in November. It's taken from Tate's Edinburgh magazine of 1849. A slight sketch of the principal institutes which commence the session in Edinburgh in November. Kind of fascinating look at education and all the courses that were available in Edinburgh and everything. So it's quite a long article, that. So I mean, I certainly found it quite fascinating. I hope you do as well, but one can only hope, basically, that you'll enjoy it. Okay, so that's basically it. I think there seems to be a continued amount of press coverage on this Brexit deal, whether it will pass in Parliament or not. The settled theme seems to be it probably won't pass in Parliament. But Theresa May's desperately trying to make some late changes. For example, the Scottish Tory party is adamant that fishermen have been sold down the water yet again by an English Prime Minister. So they're up in arms and say they will certainly vote against the deal. And it seems there's a growing number of Tory MPs, up to something like 83 now, that say they will vote it down if it comes through. And the DUP says they'll vote it down. Labour says they'll vote it down. So frankly, if you look at all the people that are saying they're going to vote it down, I can't see how the heck Theresa May is going to get it through. And I think she probably needs to resign if she doesn't get it through, and hopefully we'll get someone better to get things going. To be honest with you, coming out with a no deal is, I think, my preferred option nowadays, so we'll see how it goes. Anyway, there you go. That's the kind of newsletter for this week. Hope you enjoy it, and as always, I'll put a link in the comment section below this video so you can download it and get all the links to the stories. Okay, thanks for listening. Take care. Have a good weekend.